What are the Akashic records? That's a Sanskrit term. But the Akashic records are referred to in the Bible as the Book of Life. And so what it means, and there's slight variations of what that means, but in a nutshell, it's the memory. It's the absolute complete memory of everything. And they used to say the Book of Life is God's memory. But it's not quite accurate. It's really our soul's memory, which feels like God's because our soul seems so much higher than our mortal self. So we go, wow, that must be God. God doesn't have a memory as we think of it. God doesn't have a chronological memory of you, your existence, and so on. I know it seems like it would, but the truth is, if you were to record any kind of chronological memory of God's, and you said, God, let's see a snippet. Show us the synopsis of your memory. The memory would be, God is. God then says, I love so much that I'm going to create more love. Let there be light. And in that moment, God's children were born. God's children, for a fraction of a second, forgot who they were, and then they woke up. And God said, let's celebrate your awakening. That's it. It's really short in chronology. It's short in detail. It's beyond any comprehension of measure in reality. But as we measure time, that's what it would look like. Somewhat click, 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 done. The good news is it's that 1 second that we thought we could be apart from God never really happened. So it's just a fraction of a second. It's not even a fraction really, but we use that figure of speech. But here's the thing. In that one split fraction of a second, all of time seems to have existed. Meaning in God there's no time. And that's why there's no record. How do you record something that doesn't exist? But so there's no time, so there's no recording. No, here's the history, here's the future. That doesn't exist. But in our dimension, time seems to have gone on. Let's just pretend it's 10 billion years, just to use a round number. But the Akashic records began when time began, and they end when time ends, and time will end. So the Akashic records are not the memory of God, because anything related to God is eternal, and the records are not eternal. They're only eternal in the third dimensional plane, which is nothing eternal at all here. This will come to an end. So the Akashic records are the memory of our soul, but the memory of all souls. Your Akashic record is going to have your record of your lifetimes and experiences, every thought, every word, every action, everything you've ever experienced on any dimension, any level, in time. It's there in your Akashic record. But your Akashic record, or the Akashic record that you have, is your record, but it's also our records. So in a way you have like a coin, two sides. You flip it this way and you can see your record. You flip it this way and you can see our collective records. The collective records are so abstract, so high dimensionally speaking, that almost nobody can tap it. And if they do, they get snippets. Just because someone says they're a psychic doesn't mean they read the Akashic records. Let me explain that a little bit, and I hope this isn't too far out. We have chakras. And if we were trying to look at the chakras as a linear thing, your second chakra is your emotional center. And in that center is what most psychics tune into. They can tell you're sad about this, or there's some exciting news. But a lot of times it's emotionally based. Relationship, grief, loss. They pick up a lot from that center. The Akashic records are not located in your emotional center. I know you already know where I'm going with this. Where are they? They're in your heart. Our heart and soul is the location, for lack of a better word, of the library. And the Akashic records, there's nothing to compare to it. There's the famous Library of Alexandria. There's the British Museum and its library. None of these times a million would compare to the soul's Akashic records, the records of all things ever. And Just because someone says they're psychic doesn't mean they read the Akashic records. And that's because it takes more than just kind of like a psychic senses, which is like a sixth sense. Its senses even beyond the sixth sense. And it's beyond even clairvoyance, clairaudience, because those are sometimes still psychic-centered experiences, even though they use a little bit of third eye and clairaudience and some of our clairvoyant chakras, centers, glands in the body. It's still different, and it has a different approach. These records, it's a hall, and it's kind of like if you went into the Library of Congress. You just walked right in, and think you're going to go start messing with all their books. You're not going to get away with it. They're going to lock you up. Okay? You're not allowed to just go in. Well, who are you? Oh, my name's Joe Blow. I just wanted to look in some books. We want to know who you are, what you're about. And if you are looking for something, let us help you. We don't want you just tossing books around. The Akashic records, you cannot just read them. I don't care if you're psychic or not psychic. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care if you lived more lifetimes than the average person. You never get into that library without being in the consciousness of that library, in the consciousness of it. Okay? When you see a unicorn, if you were to see one, or sometimes even just a bird or animal of today, when you see such things, notice how so often, and in fables too, you can't just walk up to them if they don't sense innocence, soul level consciousness. They don't let you get near them. Sometimes you can't even see them. What I'm saying is for the Akashic records, man, you have to earn that level of consciousness. You can't just go, gosh, I heard about the Akashic records. I'm kind of in the mood to dabble with that. I think I'll try this technique or that technique. It doesn't work like that. There are only a few, comparatively speaking, a few people that have ever been able to really tap the Akashic records. Some people through deep mystical visions. Sometimes soul journeys, like shamanic journeys, can do things like that. But I would not say that I would trust that every person that says they can see such things is seeing such things. I wouldn't trust that. And I don't mean to be distrustful that you should or I should. I'm just saying, don't assume that that's the case. Because far too often people, I remember it started becoming kind of a fad, at psychic fairs. They didn't just say aura readings, psychic readings. The word Akasha or Akashic started becoming popular. So next thing you knew, the little card up on the table, Akashic, record readings, $20, And you go and you sit, and it's the same as most psychics. It's not the Akashic records. Quickly, a psychic tunes into you, and they might go, do you know somebody with the letters initials Cayce? Yeah, I think so. For some reason, that person's thinking about you, and I'm sensing this, and I'm picking up that, and does this mean something to you? See, it's beautiful. It's absolutely astounding, and sometimes very accurate. Even seeing deceased people and describing things doesn't mean it's the Akashic records. That's still the brilliance of psychic skills and all these other kinds of things, clairvoyance and all that. The Akashic records, again, slightly different or majorly different, but there's a fine line between them. Always will be. The Akashic records instead, there's no, I'm kind of sensing this or that. Instead, when you really get the Akashic records, it's absolute. It's like not kind of. Buddha and many others said, a guy named Saint Martin and others, I'm not teaching you information that I've studied or read. It's in me. It's in my soul. What they were saying was, they were in their own way, Buddha included, when I teach you what you're going to later call Buddhism, is coming from the soul records. This is the Akashic records on how to become enlightened. And that's what he's doing. A Course in Miracles is an extension of, you could say, the Akashic records to a degree. But it's in the Akashic records is everything, including Christ consciousness. And so then all of a sudden you go, wow, Christ can speak through. Because the Akashic records are not just the past, they're not just the present, but the probable future, the likely, possibilities and probabilities even of the future. So spirit speaks through the records to us. Why would it speak through records instead of just whatever from some abstract external thing? Because I believe, first of all, my body believes it is what it is because of genetic records, right? Those are records. Those are detailed little records of some kind passed by family members. So I am physically, physiologically, anatomically my genetic records. But my soul doesn't buy that. My soul says, I am based on my Akashic records. I can't be your Akashic records. If your Akashic records say that you've gone through certain things and it makes you afraid of water, and I don't have those experiences, I'm not afraid of water. In other words, all of our deepest soul stuff is written in the records. So when you decide to be born, even when you choose the external genetic stuff, this is the family, they have to match your Akashic records. If your records say, I need to work on some self-doubt, the records are living records. Listen to this carefully. They're living records. They're not static. They're alive, literally in us. When you see the shape of your nose, your records are actually protruding out, not just your nose. Your records are saying Mediterranean, Jewish, Native American, whatever it is. Your eyes, whatever form they are. Wow, look at that. Your ears, your hair color. You go, oh no, it's just genetics. No, the records helped pick what family you have so that it could genetically match what you needed to do, what you needed to be, what you needed to look like. All this may sound a little complicated, and I'm sorry for that because it's an abstract concept that I'm trying to make a little bit tangible. But just like you have the Hall of Records, here and there, the Library of Congress records, you have records in your local city hall, they have records of what's happened in that town. We have soul records. My soul and our soul is accessible. We can read that. You go into the library, and just like you might do the old microfiche, or you go to a computer and search, find, Michael Mirdad or whatever your name is out there, you would go, if you knew how to read the Akashic records, and if you could reach them, you would be able to go in the hall, so to speak, the Hall of Records, and the spiritual, soul library. You would type in your name or the name of the person you're doing a search for, and it's search, find, click, enter, and the records would come up. It's fascinating and it's beautiful, but I want to make it tangible. Right now we're doing an online course. If you're not in it, please join us. We got dozens and dozens and dozens of people in the course, and it's just incredible. We're only getting started now, and it's on developing Christ consciousness. So that as we do this, we start to find that topics like Akashic records are not for the few, and prophecy not for the few, mastery not for the few, ascended mastery, health, healing, sexiness, or whatever you're into. All of these things are available to us when we awaken the true who we are. Not just a little more of who we are, but the real truth of who we are, which is the living Christ on earth. Or to say, instead of Christ, if that doesn't work for you, we are literally the light of God, seemingly on earth now, manifested on earth now, but we can still live fully, and we want to learn how to do that. So that's a little bit of what it's about. You can go online and read a little bit more of get a take on that. But part of my point is this, that, this consciousness, to me, it's just fascinating. Christ consciousness. You can't awaken Christ consciousness and not be able to read the Akashic records. But when you do, it may look a little different than the way the other person does it. Edgar Cayce, one of my case in points here, Edgar Cayce could read the Akashic records. Now, when you go to an average psychic, I think, again, it's fantastic. It's something wise to do now and again. I think it's great. When you go to an average psychic, there's variables on how good they are, but they're still reading you psychically. So sometimes when you're really wanting to date that person, but you're not sure, but you deep down, man, you want it, you can actually taint the reading. You can actually twist the outcome, and they say, oh, I'm sensing there's this person, and wow, you're going to meet them, and it's magic, and you're like, oh, I knew it. But they're picking up on your desire for it to be that way. The Akashic records, for the most part, can't be messed with. They just are. So Edgar Cayce had the gift of reading the Akashic records. Nostradamus, as a prophet, read the Akashic records, but wasn't able to really articulate them in a form that everybody could understand, because it was all cloaked, because it had to be hidden for the time, in fear of persecution. That's what was happening in those days, and still happens today. But Cayce could read the Akashic records like nobody else. And when they say, sometimes people say, you know, Edgar Cayce, some of these TV shows, it cracks me up. Makes me want to, you know, just bash the TV, you know, throw it away or whatever. I don't know if you guys know the little story. Elvis Presley is pretty crazy in so many ways and eccentric, but if he was watching TV shows with things that he just thought were so ridiculous or repulsive, he would actually shoot the TV screen. So I'm not asking you to go that far, but I'm just saying sometimes, man, they have these shows, they bring up Edgar Cayce and they'll say something ridiculous like, one of, already wrong, America's already wrong, best psychics. And that's just completely ludicrous. First of all, if you're going to say one of, find me a better one. Find me a more accurate one. There actually isn't a more accurate one, being that he's gauged at being 80-90% accurate. And the 10 to 20% that you're not sure if he's accurate, he's only not accurate because it hasn't been proven yet, or they're not sure how to interpret what he said. But in other words, it's 80-90 plus accurate. The average psychic might be 60, which is actually high, because even flipping a coin, and they say it's scientific experiments, end up 50%, 50-50. So a psychic 60, and you're beating science in terms of your ability to guess something accurately. Imagine it's like another level, man, 80-90%, fantastic. So he, however, doesn't say in his readings, as he lies back on his couch, loosens his tie, that's what he did. We now see the entity in question. And let's say you say, can you do a reading for a person named Joe Blow in Nebraska? Here's what he would do. We have found the entity Joe Allen Blow, and he picks up names you didn't give. Born on this day at this time. Funny thing. Then the person in the room says, what's that? Because he's in a trance. Funny thing. They say, what's that? He's not actually the child of the person they think he's the child of, and tells you that. Then says, and you mentioned that he was in Nebraska. He's not. He's actually on a road trip and he's somewhere else right now, but he'll be home tomorrow back in Nebraska. There's no kind of, maybe, sort of, I'm sensing. It's bam, bam, bam. I love that kind of clarity. I just dig it. It's kind of what I like to do in my own life, but I love it. But notice the straightforwardness. Notice it's not hemming and hawing. You know, how did Jesus teach when he's teaching people? Did he say, well, I don't really have anything to say today, but if I did, you know, why don't you all kind of get along, you know? It's not how it works. But Jesus isn't saying, I'm going to tap the Akashic records. Buddha didn't say, I'm going to tap the Akashic records. And Michael Mirdad doesn't say, I'm going to tap the Akashic records per se. Here's what happens. Cayce, who is beyond brilliance, he's not just the best in America, he's the best in the world that we know of in terms of accuracy, because not of just who he was, but what he was reading from. The records, the full, thorough, accurate records of the soul, the Akashic records. And just as an aside, in case you're interested, they asked him in readings, remember, tens of thousands of readings. I mean, it's amazing. But there's also readings he did that were not recorded. So there's a number beyond the number we know of. And the accuracy level. But on health, ancient civilizations, you know, now TV shows, they get on and they're talking about aliens or ruins, and they say, well, maybe it's this and maybe it's that, maybe it's that. To me, that's reinventing the wheel. Ask, you know, don't reinvent the wheel. Just look at the record, read what Cayce had to say, or people like Cayce that have that level of authenticity and accuracy, and then build your theories from that, because you'll save yourself some time. Anyway, there's a funny thing when they asked him in a reading, because they asked him all kinds of things, and one of them was, can humanity ever get to the point where they can actually read the Akashic records, like almost synthetically. In other words, can we create a technology that could tap into that vibration, that high vibration called the Akashic records? And in a reading, Cayce started kind of mumbling for a second because he was searching the records, and then started reciting that, which was a little incoherent, especially since some of the things he said were not known things to the people of that time, the 30s and whatever era. And he would say, yes, there will come a time where people will be able to read such, just like one day they'll be able to read the records hidden beneath the Great Pyramid, but not until people are of that consciousness, So how funny it is, it's almost like he was describing, if I may, the way we had transistor radios, then we had stereos, and we have computers, It's almost like he's describing, one day we'll create this device and you can just turn it on and dial it up and read it. It was almost that funny. Anyway, so the Akashic records, again, it's like a hall of records. You go and you search, find. So Cayce would go and say, what's the name? We need a reading for Joe Blow. And then he would say, we have the body. We have the person. And then questions and anything they said. And it would either go into a health reading or anything else. The health readings were, obviously people concerned for their health, and he comes up with the most bizarre things. You mix this with that and it'll heal this. You mix this tincture with that and it'll do that. There were times when they would say, what can we do for this particular disease? And I mean, on any topic, guys, please, let's remember to just breathe and go, that's God. That's a messenger of God. Let's give thanks for any good people and messengers and miracle workers like that, so that we can attract more of that in our lives. Instead of just going, that's scratch, curious that he could do that. Let's give thanks. Let's send prayers of gratitude, because the readings Cayce did are still helping us today. But I remember there was a woman who had a glandular disturbance that was actually taking the cells of her body and solidifying them into mineral. She was turning into stone, if you can believe that. Very, very, very rare disease, but it happens. And of course, you don't make it all the way to stone. You die because everything locks up and solidifies. He does a reading on her, do this, and it's never been cured before, but she was cured. I love that. I love so many people being healed and cured, but he gave us remedies and ideas on things we could apply 100 years later, 500 years later, and it could still work for us. Without going into the details of all his wonderful health readings and herbal concoctions and breathing exercises and yoga postures that are the best ones to do. Fantastic stuff. I just get a feeling we're gonna do something with that in the near future. But what I want to say to you is, what if we call this all Christ consciousness? What if instead of having, your Jane Fonda workout and all these, kind of fad kinds of things, what if we could say that there are diets and exercises that most reflect being awake, being Christed? Then what would that look like? And I'm swearing to you, it would look like what you find in the Cayce readings. Cayce's suggestions on diet, exercise, they're ahead of their time. The stuff that all you folks that are into health and healing, you're going to go up and down. You're going to, with Jack LaLanne, Jane Fonda, Joe Blow, all your fads on TV, the latest thing, flipping channels, you're going to see something that says, or even on the internet, a new ad comes out. The diet of diets. Even Dr. So-and-so on TV and, on Oprah, it's advertised that this thing is going to help you lose weight in the most natural way possible. No, none of that's true. The only natural way, the ultimate natural way, is your healthiness. If you're healthy, things take care of themselves. If we're absolutely healthy, mentally, emotionally, physically, energetically, everything actually takes care of itself. We're souls that created a brilliant universe. We're capable of creating healing within our body, because this is nothing compared to what we're capable of. So we think it's amazing that we can even, do a little something and have a healing of some kind and think it's miraculous. That's nothing compared to what we're capable of. We're capable of creating prosperity, health, healing, oneness, holy relationships, all kinds of things. And we just think so linearly. So I'm saying, what if we can go past just the linear stuff, guys, and start imagining that we're awakening Christ consciousness, and therefore the Akashic records become more open to us and us open to them. All of a sudden, the diet I choose is like the highest, truest spiritual diet. I'm starting to realize what herbs can really do for us, or what exercise can do. Not obsessive exercise. Got to go to the gym 3 hours. I got to look perfect. It's more like homeostasis. It's like this beautiful balance in consciousness reflected in the body. And that's why for so many years I chose to make a statement and say, you know what? You folks all are so obsessed and so twisted about ideas of diet and exercise and whatever. I'm going to not do any of it, and until now, getting to be almost 60, saying, I'm going to prove it to you guys, that you're guilting people to eat a certain way, you're shaming people to exercise a certain way, that it's all bogus. It is, unless you do it from the right consciousness. So now I've proven my point, made my point. Some people love that I did it, and some people hate me for it, and I don't really care either way. The bottom line is I demonstrated the truth. That's not how you become healthy, by obsessing and forcing. Now we become. So now I'm able to come back, and I dig that. I can feel it and see it coming back and being able to do the things I really think are cool, in terms of having a nice balance and all that, and living it, but not from a place of fear and obsessiveness. So now I can demonstrate some of that, in my way. So imagine not just diet and health, but what about information? What if we all start recognizing you can know all things, but again, not from an egotistic place. But what if you can know all things? So Cayce would sit down, go into a trance, not remember what he said. That's one type of doing a reading. The other is to be the living reading. One, you go into a trance, you don't remember it. The other is you are it. And that's the highest. And Cayce, although had to go into a trance, it's far higher than almost anybody that's ever done it to this date, obviously. Even the living it to a degree. Trancing out, man, he did just the best, I think, that you have in history. But he didn't know how to live it day and night. So now we're at a new generation, and we can say, if we can just learn to do what he taught, or Jesus teaches, or Buddha teaches, whatever, whomever that you admire as an example of life and consciousness, if you start living those principles in a balanced, non-obsessive way, then you actually become the living records. You become the Akashic records, which then is getting you back to, you become a living version of Christ consciousness. Jesus once said, when you see me, you see the Father, meaning there's no difference. I'm holding divinity in these very cells, which is not easy to do, because cells by nature are limited three-dimensional things, and spirit is completely unlimited. So for you to be able to take unlimited energy and pack it into a cell and expect the cell to not burst into light is quite an achievement. Most people don't have to worry about that because they're not there yet. But we can be there. So part of what I'm saying is the trancing, what that Cayce did is again beyond, comprehension for most. But what I'm asking us to do is now, let's start becoming the living presence of that. So we start learning to awaken and develop Christ consciousness, and then do this. What Buddha said is, I'm teaching you what's here. He didn't trance and bring it in and share it. He's saying, this is it. I'm sharing it as it downloads to me. It's part of me, not a separate thing. It's part of me. That's what I'm leading to. I feel very, very, very grateful and humbled to say that when I teach, like Buddha said, like St. Martin said, like St. Teresa said, and other people, we're not teaching something from our head. We're not teaching something we heard. It's just this organic process of saying, believe it or not, it's not an intellectual process either. What it is humility. You say basically, how can I help today? When you learn to not just say that, but mean it, really and truly, how can I help? You can be a surgeon that has studied things, but yet new ideas and other things will come to you at the time that are different. Edgar Cayce channeled things that were different from the common things out there. And that you and I can do. You can be a mechanic and have things come to you that nobody else is thinking of, because simply there's a part of your heart that's open to saying, if there's another way, I would like to know what that way is. If there's another way to help this customer, this client, if you're in sales, all we learn to do is open our heart more, and more comes, more happens, more supernaturally happens. And I've shared that before, that when I teach, it's kind of like you throw a word at me and then it just starts happening. But I don't sit here and say that's, like it's intellectual. Nor do I necessarily have had a background of reading it. It just starts happening. And whatever level it is, whether it's a perfect 10 out of 10 or if it's an 8 out of 10 in terms of its height of vibration or accuracy, I don't care to rate it. But I'm saying what's beautiful is the more you channel love, God, the more you're accessible to the Akashic records, and then you get to know everything. On that note, one time Helen Schuckman, who wrote A Course in Miracles, some of you know this story, but she was starting to have visions about an awakening. Something was happening, very supernatural, and something really amazing was coming to her. So she has this vision, and in this vision she's kind of, I think it's up a little river or something, and then a boat comes to a shoreline. She gets off the shore. She goes to this thing that's sitting there, and it's a scroll. And when she looks at the scroll, she unrolls it just slightly, and there's the words, God is. Then, as she gets ready, she's told, if you unroll the scroll to the left, you can read the past. That's the Akashic records. See, she, in her gifts, was going to be able to be the next Edgar Cayce. Unroll to the left, you can know anything about the past. Unroll to the right, and you can be Cayce or Nostradamus to know the future. For some reason, she stopped. Most of us would not. We would go, absolutely, that's so fascinating, right? She rolls it back to where she can only see the middle, God is. And when she did, she heard the voice of God or Christ consciousness say these words, congratulations, you passed this time. And what that means is, even just being able to read information is fantastic. You can develop skills to do that, consciousness to do that. But why don't you just choose to be the presence of God first, and then you would know all those things anyway? When she did that, she received A Course in Miracles. She may not and likely would not have received the gift of A Course in Miracles had she not chosen God first. Instead, she would have probably become an incredible reader, or Akashic record reader for that matter. So what would you do? What do you think you would have chosen had I not told you what happened at the end of the story? The past, the future, which one, or both? I mean, most of us would go, wow, I'm going to do that. Let me first go to the future and look up lottery, right? That's what we would like to do. Or the past. Why did that person hurt me the way they did? I want to know. So it becomes I-oriented, ego I. Instead, we come to a place where we grow and say, you know what? Not me, not mine, but thine will be done. And all of a sudden God says, wow, nice job, thank you. And then it's allowed to work through us. So the Akashic records are the past, present, and possibilities and possibilities of the future. And that's why when you read it, Nostradamus, Cayce, whomever, they would say, it's not set in stone. What they were saying was, the records are living records. Living records means mutable, meaning every sneeze can change something there. The acts of love and forgiveness can change that. So if I said to all of you, guess what, guys? I'm just saying something you might have heard before, but love and forgiveness can change the world. You would go, oh yes, hallelujah. And if I said, and if we put more love and forgiveness in the world, we download it, let's meditate, let's do a world forgiveness of all of us at noon are going to, stand on one foot and do pranayama breathing and say, sing All You Need Is Love. And then it would help. It would help. And I think all of you would agree, wow, that's so cool. Yeah, I agree. And you'd have all your silly, online messages. I totally agree, But at the end of the day, forget the world forgiveness crapola for just a second. What about you? What are you doing to change your records? Don't tell me about changing the future of the world. What are you doing to change your future? What are you doing? Because it's a living record. If you don't want your life to suck tomorrow, what are you doing today? If you don't want to have your 18th marriage tomorrow, what are you doing today? If you don't want to have another betrayal, if you don't change the record today, it won't change. Your future is set. It's going to be the same. On that note, some of you might be going, wow, so where can I get my access to the records now? Well, for just $19.95. No, it's not something somebody sells you. How do you change it? The living record, swear to God, is right here. And it's rooted in my own soul. When I do heart and soul healing and uproot my patterns through love and forgiveness, but through the soul level healing process I teach or that other people teach in various forms, instead of just, boom shakalaka external stuff, a little rub of this and a thing of that to say, well, I'm all better, or if I eat just right, I'm all better. That's not going to heal your relationships. So we learn to go inside and heal the stuff of our soul, our misgivings. In other words, typos and such that were put into the records in the past. Things that were, things I want to go back and delete. Go back, highlight, delete, so that we can change the records. That's how this works. As you awaken Christ consciousness, which is synonymous with, in a sense, contingent upon love and forgiveness, it's going to happen anyway. You don't have to have an intellectual process per se, but you have to participate. You can't just go, well, Jay, I heard about this tonight in this talk, so when you go to sleep tonight, you can't just go, hey, God, clear all my records. I'll be waking up tomorrow and I want a whole new life. Even if you could say that to God, God will say, I'll be right on it. Now I'm going to need you to do everything to change it. It's not going to be, God's going to do this. God's going to say, great, sounds good to me. What are you going to do? So you still have to participate. We still have to participate. If we want to change the future of the world, we change it internally first through love and forgiveness. By changing the records. The records are saying, here's what's probably going to happen. And the future of this country and the world do not look good. If you don't know that, let me tell you that. The Akashic records do not have wonderful future. Some of you guys are like, oh, that's not true. There's a website out there right now that said, more kittens are born every day, so we're going to have a future of cute, furry kittens. And I'm telling you, no. Things are not looking good because humans, by and far, are often still hating and judging. And you can say, yeah, those people do still do that, don't they? I'm talking about us. We still judge stuff. And if you don't think you do that, just think about the recent, the election. Think about your boss. Think about your finances or bills you can't pay, and you'll realize we still live in fear. That's not wrong or bad. It's understandable. Forgive yourself. You know not what you do. But if you want a different future, obsessing or fearing isn't going to make that happen. It's going to be more of the same. So I, for one, can say that our future is no better than we are today. So what are we going to do? And I would say to us all, practice love and forgiveness. Read only the best stuff, man, the stuff that really hits you. Do the processes that only are the best. See the chiropractors that have the most effect on you, the acupuncturists that have the most effect, the counselors that... Don't go to a counselor and talk for 10 years and get nowhere. Only do the best. Listen to the best programs, watch the best programs, attend the best workshops, do the most efficient, effective meditations. Just commit, and not in an obsessive way, but just more of a, God, this is great. How cool. Instead of going to 10 workshops this year, I'm going to only do the 4 best and get far further than I would if I'd have done 10. I'm not going to need to meditate 2 hours a day and just sit there and get nowhere. I think I'm going to commit even just 5 minutes to the most brilliant connecting with God. I'm not going to just see any psychic. I want a psychic that believes in God and not just their own powers. And I'm not going to just parent. I want to parent as beautifully as I can. I really want to parent as beautifully as I want to nurture light beings. That doesn't mean they don't have their own path and karma and all that, but at least my intention is I want to birth and raise light beings. And just a different world, guys. And if not us, then who? And if not now, when? Who's going to do it and when? Don't wait for somebody else to come along and magically shift it. Because any being worth its salt or worth the light that it is would never try to come here and manufacture a better looking place for us. It would teach us how to do it. So why wait for somebody to show up again from the heavens, like literally descending from the clouds in some miraculous thing on CNN? Do it now as though it's already happened. I'm one of those people sitting here talking to you about this. Listen to me or don't. And if you don't like me, go to somebody who you will listen to. And one of the people to listen to is right here. There's a being, it's your soul in your heart. And it loves, its dialogue is love-based. Not love like romance, but love, forgiveness, healing-based. And that's what changes the world. My becoming more healed in my heart changes my world. And when my world changes, our world changes. Why? Because my Akashic record overlaps with the Akashic records. Everything I shift within me will affect the whole, one way or the other. And the more of us that can heal our heart and soul, and develop a greater quantity of Christ consciousness, the better off we're all going to be. So I'm going to close with this. And again, as I always say, I really pray this is making sense because I just get going. I'm going to put on my one of my Facebook pages somewhere. Maybe you'll see this, or maybe you can Google it and find it somewhere. But one of you were kind enough to send me a Facebook post. It's a video of a woman, Jewish woman who was in Auschwitz. Now that doesn't sound like real light reading, does it? Or wonderful TV watching or whatever, exciting stuff. But in a nutshell, this woman was describing herself in Auschwitz, she and her twin sister, and what they went through. She's a synopsis, what they went through, and the torture and the disgusting, ridiculous behavior that some people lived at that time, acted out in that time, and dished out on other people at that time. But she went through this, and her sister went through all kinds of experimentations and horrors. And she remembers, the primary doctors of these horrors that worked in these camps. But one of them was one that worked on her, and it wasn't the number one main one, although she interacted with that guy too. But what she says in this story is this: she describes the experience, the horrors. She then says, I'm just paraphrasing, she meets somebody who asks if she wouldn't mind going to a conference and sharing her story about Auschwitz and her survival and the horrors. And she said, I would be okay doing that. So she agrees. This was going to be in the Northeast. So she goes and she's going to do a talk. The person who invites her says, would you mind if I also invite the doctor in Auschwitz that did the surgeries on you people? Wow. And she said, okay. So she went there, and she ended up meeting the guy. And I'm paraphrasing and I'm keeping it brief, but at some point, she asked him, did you know what was going on? The guy said, yes. How did you feel about it? He says, it was horrible, and I live with the nightmare every day. Remember, people do hurtful things, but they know not what they do. It's the stupidity, the insanity, the ego, or you could just say it's almost like being demonically possessed. It doesn't mean it's who they really are. It means it's what they've become or started acting as. So this woman, the level of brilliance and courage, and God, she was so articulate and clear. I just loved looking at her. She was just amazing, bright being. So then she's talking to him and then says, now I've come here and talked to you. Would you do me a favor? He said, okay, whatever I can do. She said, I want you to go to Auschwitz with me. So she gets this doctor and they go to Auschwitz. And they each bring their children and I think grandchildren, but they go and they talk about this. And she says, I want you, because one of the things the doctor did was he did not fill out a death certificate for all the people being killed in these ovens. He did not do that. She said, there's a lot of souls that died and you didn't honor them. So she said, I want you to fill out a paper that honors them all, that you did this, you participated, and that you're sorry or whatever. And long story short, he signs it. So she has that. And she's so proud of it. And I think it's beautiful. And then she says, I forgive you, but at first what she does is, I can't forgive yet. Instead, I'm going to go home and I'm going to recite all these vulgar terms about how much I hate you. And when she got that out of her system, she said, I forgive you. And that is what I teach in love and forgiveness classes, is that love and forgiveness doesn't mean you have to pretend that you do or you strive to forgive somebody. First, you have to get beyond hating them. however that is. And in her case, it was spewing out all these colorful words. But it released and relieved the pressure inside that she could say, now, fine, okay, I forgive. And then the end of the story is they also asked her if she would be willing to forgive the primary creep that was running all these concentration camps and so forth. And with that, she felt even more resistance. She said, I can't. But you'll see the end of the story and what happens. And one of the strange or difficult things is, guys, at the end of the story, she says, there are people, and she's meaning a lot of Auschwitz survivors or Jewish people or human beings around the world, that she says hate me for saying that I could forgive such a thing. Now, I want you all to listen to that. That means when you try to change the Akashic records and make a different future, when you try to change destiny and create a different future, it's mainly through forgiveness. Believe it or not, there are actually people that have the audacity to hate you and judge you for forgiving something. And do you know what that means? That means there are human beings still addicted to wanting the future to look just like all the other horrible things. You can't create a non-Auschwitz future if you keep resenting the Auschwitz memory. So I know that sounds controversial and all that, so do what you want with it. I loved her approach, and she said, I just tell these people, even though they don't like me, I just tell them, I know that it's hard to forgive, she says, and I'm not telling you to forgive per se what happened. She said, or forget that it happened. It's horrible, she says, but beautiful, she says, you can let go of the way it affects you. And that's more or less what she says, but it's actually more beautiful than I just said it. So think about that. Connect this story, and I'll be putting that on my Friends of Michael Mirdad Facebook page maybe today. I waited on it because I had a lot of things come up before that one that wanted posted, and I didn't want it to get lost in the shuffle, and I didn't want the other ones to get lost by this one getting so viewed. So I waited. So I'm going to post that, and the person that sent it, God bless you, and thank you for sharing that, because you did, whether you knew or not, you planted seeds of a new message into our Akashic memory. The Akashic records do have memories, records of horror things like Auschwitz, but it's waiting to be changed. It's waiting for the future concept to be erased so we don't do that again. Not through hatred, not just by let's never forget that this happened. I understand the pain says that, but that's not how it heals. That's not how it doesn't happen again. If that were true, then why did Auschwitz even happen? You know what? Because there were other horrendous things like African slavery that happened before that. That didn't seem to prevent Auschwitz, did it? Hating it or saying let's remember it or let's never forget the horrors doesn't keep them from happening. Only one thing changes the future, and it is true. It's love and forgiveness, which also is synonymous with the awakening and development of Christ consciousness. Join us in the course if you like. Look up and read a little bit more about the Akashic records if you like. Look up a little of Cayce's work, Edgar Cayce's work, and read what he had to say about the Akashic records. There are other people that say, they read it, and I think they have variables of it. I think Rudolf Steiner had a good access of the Akashic records. Probably not as vivid and sharp as the focus on Edgar Cayce's lens, but still profound. So there are people that have had it, men and women that have had that ability. And I think that everybody can do it, but don't plan on it happening and don't boast it happening. Instead, humbly develop Christ consciousness, and then you'll start seeing it happening. You'll know how things start coming to you before you even intellectually should have known, could have known those things. Here's a bizarre one for you as I say goodbye. It's a weird one, but the other day I went on one of my pages here, one of these things we do, and I shared a story because we were doing a dream interpretation somewhere along the line, and I shared how I had had a dream. I didn't give the details, and I specifically said I won't give the details because they might seem strange. And this is just a couple nights ago. We were doing some dream work in one of our courses, so I woke up and then I shared a dream. I only kept it vague, but I didn't say the specifics. And the specifics are odd and could even tempt you to think I'm weirder than you already might think. But it involved, last night I said I had this dream that I was in this one place and we were learning and I was asked to share and teach some people in this place. And so that's a real short summary. The place was at the Playboy Mansion. And I heard that morning they announced Hugh Hefner died. I don't have a ton of respect for the the person or the objectifications and all that they might have done on people. But I also don't get caught up in it or care. That's their trip. But that's amazing, because here I was having a dream as he's somewhere within hours of passing away. I'm having a dream that I'm at his place and I'm being asked, this is so bizarre, man, and I love it though. I was being asked to teach the people there to view bodies differently and love differently and sexuality differently. It was so vivid, and I might not have even remembered having that had I not been doing the course with everybody else on Christ consciousness that involved some dream study. It might have slipped by me. So here, you folks that are asking me to do this course add to my doing the course with you and adding a memory of something, an awakening of something. And now, indelible in my mind, I was asked to help these people in this certain kind of a style of life to try doing it differently. How? To do it maybe the Christ way or awakened kind of a way. And then the leader of them passed away. So how interesting. Somehow, without us knowing, we are doing inner plane work. We are doing work on higher dimensions, and people don't even realize it's us. So no, I can't send the Hefner Mansion a bill for having done this work with them, but that's okay. None of us should care about that. Know that you're helping your children even when you're not with your children. Know that you're even sending healing to your ancestors that you've never even met. Just know and trust that. The healing work is real. The spiritual changes are real. It's how we change consciousness, and it's how we change the records, but not just the past, but our lives today and the future.